This episode is brought to you by Modal Electronics, who enable you to play and perform powerful sound with their incredible synthesizers. You can enjoy vibrant wavetable patches with the Argon 8 series, or you can produce with state-of-the-art analog-style synth textures with the Cobalt 8 series. To check out Modal Electronics' incredible array of synthesizers, go to modalelectronics.com. Modal Electronics. Dare to sound different.
Well, you know, I grew up listening to the radio when I was a kid, and I grew up in Kentucky listening to mostly hillbilly music. My dad used to play they called it the hillbilly station, but it was country music and bluegrass music. And, you know, that's what got me going, was listening every morning to the radio. And I just started, you know, falling in love with music. I remember I built a crystal radio set when I was about 10 years old, and I put it next to my bed and put a speaker under my pillow. And I used to tune into this 50,000 watt clear channel jazz station out of Rochester, New York, to listen to jazz all night long. The program was on from midnight till 5 a.m. So I listened to that.
And in terms of when you first started learning to play, when was that?
Well, 14. I had seen the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, and that just, you know, killed me. And then I was big for my age. I was 6'3" when I was a freshman in high school. So I snuck into this bar in Newport, Kentucky to hear Lonnie Mack play, the guitar player. And I heard him play and sing, and that was it. The next week I went to Sears and bought a Silvertone bass guitar with the amp and the speaker in the case, and started teaching myself how to play bass.
And you know, did you take to it pretty naturally?
Well, you know, I'm persistent if nothing else. So yeah, I taught myself a few tunes, and then got a bunch of guys together from the 8th grade, and we started playing swing club and high school dances, you know, in 1964.
And you know, a lot of people talk about the 10,000 hour thing. You know, if you put in 10,000 hours, you can become, you know, like the Beatles, or like, you know, you can become very good anyway. And this is a theory put forth, I think, by Malcolm Gladwell in the book Outliers. And he said, you know, the Beatles, they did their 10,000 hours in Hamburg. Would you say that you did your 10,000 hours playing live?
Absolutely. I mean, I also practiced all the time. I mean, because I had an ear for jazz and always loved listening to jazz, and I wanted to play like those guys. So, you know, I learned rock and roll, but I always had a soft spot for jazz. So,
and in terms of the technical aspect of learning to play, did you learn to read, or because jazz you don't really need to learn to read, do you?
Well, it's much more helpful if you do know how to read. Yeah, I mean, I can read chord charts, but I can't read the ants on the staff.
But does anybody use that in kind of rock and roll or country or pop, or do many people use that?
A lot of the country guys in Nashville use number charts, but you know, basically, I think what you need to do is just learn the song and learn the spirit and the feel of the tunes, and then, you know, then put your own, you know, touches to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did things come about for you joining Pure Prairie League? Because you, correct me if I'm wrong, are by far, or you know, definitely among the longest serving members, right? You must be the longest serving member. I mean, it's quite a band with quite a lot of history, for sure.
That's no doubt, 50 years worth. Actually, I had seen the band the first time. We did a show together in Cincinnati, Ohio at the Ludlow Garage. And there were several acts on the bill. I was playing with the Lemon Pipers at the time. And Pure Prairie League was the first act on out of like 6 acts, you know, Santana and Steve Miller Band and Stone the Crows and, you know, a bunch of bands. So I saw Pure Prairie League play, and I went, yeah, these guys, I like what they're doing. And they had just started out. This was 1969, I guess. And, you know, they just started out, and I said, I want to do that one of these days. And in 1972, after living in England for a year and playing in England and doing an album and touring, when I got back, they asked me and the piano player to join the band.
And so was that in 1972?
Yes.
And
They were recording the Bustin Out album in Toronto in the summer of '72, and we had just gotten back from England in May and got the call.
And at that stage, how big were Pure Prairie League? That album hadn't done that much, had it? The initial one.
Well, the first album was released in early '72 or late '71, and it was just sort of, it was there, but it wasn't any hit by any stretch of the imagination. I think RCA was really sort of at loggerheads trying to figure out what pigeonhole to put us in, and country rock wasn't yet its own genre, if you will, and so the first album didn't really get that much notice until after the second album came out.
And in terms of during that time, how busy were you guys on the road? Were you on the road constantly playing shows?
Well, we did a lot of shows, but in '73, really, we signed with Variety Artists International, a booking agency in Minneapolis, and they were the largest booking agency in the country. So from the fall of '73 right through 1981, we toured 250, 275 days a year.
Well, you actually played colleges.
Yeah, tons of colleges.
And so you played over 250 gigs a year?
Uh-oh.
Have I lost you?
You froze.
Are we back?
Yeah, there you go. You froze for a minute.
Oh, good news. Sorry about that, Mike. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, good. So did you say you played 250 gigs a year, or you were out on the road for 250 days out of the year?
There were several years where we played 250 shows, but most of the time it was 250, 275 days on the road.
My God.
But we'd work 5-6 nights a week.
Do you think that for bands, well, I mean, obviously coronavirus answers that question, but let's say pre-coronavirus, is there that type of work anymore? Because bands kind of don't make it on the road anymore, do they? Or acts, they make it sort of on social media these days, which is a bit sad, really.
Well, these days, but it's a completely different ball game these days than it was in the '70s. Back then, colleges were putting on a lot of shows, and there were a lot of shows in theaters, and summertime was full of outdoor festivals and concerts. But colleges were great for putting on shows, in their field house or their auditoriums and whatever, and for a $2 or $3 or $4 ticket, you could see a couple of great bands, and we did we did 10,000 college shows, in 10 years, just about. It was just crazy.
Wow, what an incredible
in
journey.
50, I should say.
And does that still exist, the college show scene, or is that no longer a thing?
No,
when did that die?
Yeah, as time went on, the college boards sort of saw that it wasn't really doing much good for them, and
why?
Well, I guess it putting on a show, it costs them money, and then they sell a $5 ticket, and damage was occurring on the campuses and at the shows and stuff like that. And they just decided that, it wasn't for them anymore.
And do you have good memories of that, playing those shows and doing that? Was it ever a drag?
No, it was never a drag, because the college students were the ones that were playing our music the most. And we got rediscovered, during 73, 74, 75 by the college radio stations, because we were playing all these colleges, cramming Amie down their throats. And they, all of a sudden, it's like they're playing it all over the place on college radio stations. So RCA had to come and find us and re-sign us and do another record. And
you were so prolific at making records in the 70s and, all the way till 81. Why did you guys stop making new albums?
Well, back then when you signed a record deal, they wanted one record a year. And so basically we did all our writing on the road. Right through till 1981, we had a few personnel changes in the band. And when Vince Gill joined us in '78, we did the Can't Hold Back album. That was the last album for RCA. And then they dropped us. So we signed with Casablanca Records because our friend Bruce Bird was the president there. And they released 2 albums on us. We had a couple of top 10 singles and that was it. Then when the president of Casablanca passed away, Neil Bogart, that sort of sent the label into a tailspin. And, even though they had artists like Donna Summer and Kiss and Pure Prairie League, boy, was that a Christmas party. We once again basically just got tossed in the rubbish bin and went in search of a new label, but didn't have much success after '81 finding a label deal.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing is that there's already such a great load of music, and it's the case of, whether it's the Beatles or whether it's, Billy Joel, he stopped writing. Like, in a way, sometimes it is great to have that kind of, that body of work to look back on without, I think Elton John and Billy Joel, Elton John was always like, Billy Joel, why don't you make another record? And Billy Joel was always like, why don't you stop making records? So there is something to be said for keeping that body of work, and perhaps that's as good as it can get. Certainly, that in my mind there's so much great stuff. You mentioned obviously Vince Gill joining the band. What was it like for you guys to see Vince Gill sort of go on and do different stuff solo? Did you maintain a good relationship with him?
Absolutely. When we play in Nashville, we always try to get in and do the Grand Ole Opry, and Vince makes sure that he's the host so that he can introduce us and then come up and play with us for a couple of tunes. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, Vince is great. I knew it as the first time I saw him. He was in a band called Mountain Smoke, opening up a show for us in Oklahoma City, his hometown. And boy, he was just knocking our socks off. So we asked him to come up and play with us, during our show. And he played 4 or 5 songs, and I asked him to join the band on the spot, but he said, no, I'm a grasser. I'm fine where I am. And then a couple of years later, we were auditioning guitar players, singers, songwriters, and he showed up with a friend of his that wanted to audition. The guy didn't really work out at all, but we asked Vince if he wanted to stick around and jam for a little while. We played for 4 hours, and I asked him again, you want to join the band? And he said, yeah. So, then off we went. So for the fact that he was in the band for 3 or 3.5 years and did 3 records with us, it was just a great experience. And, we were thrilled when he went, well, we weren't thrilled, but when he said, it's time for me to move on. I'm thinking about moving to Nashville and trying to get into the country market. We sent him off with blessings. It's like, hey, we've never stopped anybody from doing what they wanted to do. And, Pure Prairie League over the history has actually been a springboard for quite a few very, very talented and successful people. Vince Gill, Gary Burr, Curtis Wright, the Goshorn brothers, Craig Fuller. So, we've had a lot of illustrious members
absolutely in the band. And it's a band with a kind of a really cool, like, storied history, and just everything about it. Like, also for a British person like me, it's so, like, kind of, it has all the good elements of America, kind of seeming like this mystical, exotic place. Even some of the record covers evoke that. In terms of do you have a favorite kind of incarnation on record of the band? Is there a record for you that you think, an album that you think is like your strongest, or are they all so different?
Well, they're all different, and that was by design. We never wanted to be like a one-trick pony because of our different musical backgrounds, and we always wanted to try something new, but still keep the flavor of the band and the sound. And So, I mean, we did some stuff like on the Can't Hold Back album, Vince's first record, we did some songs that had a lot of R&B. We had horn sections. We had the Memphis Horns playing with us, and David Sanborn, and we did stuff. We even used a couple of the guys from Miami Sound Machine on a track. So you know, we were
What track was that?
Well, it didn't get released on the album, but it was called "A Friend in Me." It was written by a friend of ours from Los Angeles, and
Did it get released on another album? Never got released.
It didn't, and I've tried to find you know, a copy of that record from you know, from way back when. The guy's name was Wayne Barry that wrote the song, and it was a great song, but we did it with a kind of a salsa arrangement, and it was just, I mean, it was a mind blower. Vince was playing like Larry Carlton, and Sanborn was wailing, and Joey Galdo and Richie Puente were just slamming it out rhythmically, and boy, what a gas that was. That was probably my favorite musical memory with this band.
Wow, I mean, I would love to hear that. What
you and me both, pal.
Yeah. So you obviously at this stage, you know, you probably don't think you're going to be able to get your hands on it again.
I've tried for years. It was one of those things where you know, RCA got the masters, but you know, I called our producers, the Albert brothers, who we recorded at Criteria in Miami, and I said, you know, many times, have you ever run across a copy of that, you know, those outtakes from those sessions from Can't Hold Back? And they've looked and looked, but nobody's ever been able to locate anything.
God, how frustrating. And in terms of your return to the studio, like for a new studio recording, was that, you know, after 81 was the next time that you guys got back into the studio to create something new? Was that all in good time? Or is that,
no, we did
Songs of Pure Harmony?
No, we did a record in 1987 for a compact disc manufacturer in Dublin, Ohio. And it was basically it was sort of our thank you and good night. I got all the guys that had been in the band over the years, from Craig and George and John, to the Goshorn brothers, to Vince and the Sweethearts, you know, who sang on it, and that we got everybody to come in and re-record about 10 songs that we had, you know, done over the years, and we put 4 new songs on there as well and released that. But it was a very limited release. I think only 500 or 1,000 copies got pressed before the record label, the CD manufacturer, went bust. So. But it was great. I still got that hanging around, and luckily I have the masters. So that's, you know, that'll resurface at some point.
Awesome. And then you got back in you know, post 2000 was the next time that you guys went into the studio, right?
Right. We took a break in 1988, you know, because we were down to playing small theaters, and the next logical step, you know, in the band's career would have been playing clubs. And, you know, we'd been on the road for so long, we weren't really, you know, thrilled about the prospects. So we decided to take a little time off and take a break from touring. And we stayed in touch during that time, but we were raising kids and you know, just working on our stuff, and got back together in 1999 just to see how it would work. And, you know, the rest is history. We've been playing, you know, constantly since 1999. And in 2005, we did the All in Good Time record at Craig's house in North Carolina. And, you know, once again, we released it ourselves. It wasn't really, you know, it sells on the website, and it sells at the shows, and, you know, it sells on Amazon. So.
Yeah, and it's a great record, and it's got great reviews.
Yeah.
How come you guys don't want to do more of that? I mean, I guess it's quite a costly exercise, really. I mean, for anyone in the music industry, going and making any new music, recorded music, the chances of you getting a return on it. I mean, you have different reactions. You have some people who come on this podcast and they sort of say how wonderful Spotify is, and then you get some people really getting quite furious about Spotify. So it varies, you know, depending on whether it's David Crosby or whether it's you know, someone a bit younger.
Everybody has their own experiences, you know, with that. But
absolutely,
but I think a bunch of the old farts like me and some of and David and people like that are so used to doing it a different way. I mean, Neil Young's kept up with technology and the times, and God bless him. Personally, yes, it's an expensive thing. I tried all last year to do another record, and when COVID hit, it just threw the spanner in the works, if you will, and that was that had to put everything on hold. But I'm still determined to do one more record.
Yeah, well, I hope you do, and not just one more, but I mean, so the coronavirus pandemic putting a stop to touring, having played since the late 90s when you got back together constantly. How's it been? How have you adjusted to what's been a pretty weird, difficult time in so many ways?
It's been an adjustment, because once again, we cut ourselves down to doing 50 or 60 shows a year, starting in 2000. And because we didn't want to go out and just burn ourselves out again. So that wasn't, the schedule wasn't terrible. But when the coronavirus hit, it was just, we had 55 shows on the books last year by the beginning of the year. And, it's our 50th year, our 50th anniversary. So we were, planning on having special guests come out and, and do some things. But, the virus just grabbed that one by the short hairs and, threw us home. I got to say, though, it's been nice having the time off, but Jesus, it's been a year already. And, that's why I'm sitting here in my little studio that I built downstairs. I've got my guitars, I've got, my books, I've got my office.
So a very fine studio.
It's just a great little space, and it doesn't disturb my wife when she's upstairs and that, and it gives me a place to come and I can play, I play along with records, I play along with our stuff. I've been working on putting songs together for a live record because we've recorded all our shows in 2019 and 2020, the 5 shows that we did last year. And so I've been going through all those tapes and culling out some good versions, and I've been working on mixing, those things for a live record. So that'll be, that's a project that is upcoming and it's in progress. And so I've been making use of the time. I also wasted a lot of time just being bored and trying to figure out, what am I doing and what's going on and when's this ever going to end?
Yeah, I feel like it's easy to get sucked into sort of checking the news too often because it's like you're kind of curious as to when lockdown might end. I never used to check the news at all. I don't know about you.
And I'm way off of it now. I mean, I didn't like it. I never checked it before, but now I can't even watch it. It's very disheartening. So I just put myself to, I mean, if I want to waste some time, I'll watch something on Netflix or, from my DVD collection. Or,
yeah, it's more uplifting and you'll get more out of it. You get more knowledge out of it. You get more knowledge out of watching a great documentary or TV show or a movie or consuming some art than you will out of consuming misery and sensationalization.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I've gotten a bunch of audio books, and I play those on my Sonos speakers around the house while I'm cleaning out the basement or working in my studio or doing things like that, or cooking upstairs. So I'm honing certain other skills. I'm getting to be a pretty decent cook, and I'm also getting a lot of books read or listened to by,
it's a great thing to do.
Instead of having the TV on. So.
Yeah, it's a much better way to use the time. So you've sent me some music, some favorite artists, and of course you mentioned the Beatles, seeing them on Ed Sullivan, which I can't tell you how many people, whether it's Earth, Wind and Fire or Toto or like I don't know whoever, like so many people have come on this podcast and mentioned that exact moment, and I think even some people were commenting on YouTube like, God, this interviewer like shouldn't even bother, like everybody's just saying Beatles, Ed Sullivan. I mean, you can't really sum up how much of a moment it was
Completely a
Kenny,
watershed moment. That was
how many people tuned in?
Was so many people's careers.
Was it the largest TV audience in history up until that point or something?
Well, I'm not exactly sure of the fact, but I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, that was right a couple of days before my birthday, and I was just thrilled to death. And I was plastered in front of the TV, and from then on, I went and saw him several times.
Did you?
Oh yeah, saw him a couple of times in Cincinnati, and
oh my god,
yeah, it was great, just great.
And what like, how were they live? Like, was it, because obviously today everything is so kind of, when you go and see a lot of shows, everything is super tight and like varnished and I mean, even really cool like really great old school bands, like, I can sense that maybe some things are being run through a tuner or I don't know, like there's technology there to make sure that things are pretty smooth. But back then it was way different. The technology wasn't there. And I've seen some footage and like, I don't know, even like sometimes John's vocals are a bit like, but it doesn't matter. It still sounds awesome. Were they just incredible?
Yeah, well, actually they were a really good band for four guys. They made a lot of music. Every once in a while things were a little wonky, but plus, I mean, I saw them in places like Cincinnati Gardens, a big ice hockey and basketball rink, or at the Reds baseball stadium, where it was just so noisy that you could barely hear what they were playing. But they were a good, tight band. Back then, their vocals were really good, and they didn't rely on any gadgetry. They just went out and played rock and roll music. And in the '60s, that was the thing.
Mm.
I have the utmost respect.
Oh, I couldn't respect them more. I respect them. They are. I think John Lennon said the Beatles were bigger than Jesus. I mean, I think they are. That they've replaced religion to a lot of people. I mean, rightly or wrongly. I mean, I'm not saying that. I don't want to get my podcast burnt.
Well, I mean, I think we've all had enough time to be able to suss that comment out and get the proper perspective of what he meant.
Yeah. He said it in a particular type of context, and he actually said he actually was meaning that it was quite sad,
right?
That the church was in decline, but. In terms of the Beatles, beyond that point, did you stay a fan, right up until Abbey Road? And
I'm still a fan. I've got every Beatle record, every book about the Beatles, every tape and show and video that I can get my hands on, just to just to keep that that it's not hard to keep that spark alive. I mean, I think that songwriting. They're singing, I mean, everything kind of went to shit after a while, but when they had their time, they were incredible, and they did a pretty good job of handling all that and making terrific music, and that's what they were intent on doing. So, kudos to them.
And their personalities.
For everybody, I don't think there's a musician alive that can't or does not acknowledge the impact that they had on their music and their careers.
Yeah, they paved the way in so many different senses.
Absolutely.
You also mentioned Steely Dan. Obviously, they sort of were finding success at a similar time to Pure Prairie League. When did you first start getting into their music?
We actually did some shows opening up for them. I just always loved the Fagan and Becker's sensibility and their vision, and they stuck to it. No matter what. I've got my tickets for Jones Beach for July to see them and Steve Winwood, up here in Long Island at the Jones Beach Amphitheater. So, and I see them whenever they're in New York at the Beacon Theater or whatever. So I just, they're consummate musicians. They're great songwriters. I mean, I would love to have been a storyboard artist for some of their videos, but they didn't do videos. So,
why were people doing lots of videos around then?
Nah. Steely Dan wasn't
a better time.
In that MTV thing or any of that. But I mean, the imagery that they create in their songwriting. To me,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you can just sit back and close your eyes and see the song, you know. I mean,
Very cinematic.
Gaucho, oh my God. So I've worn those records out, several copies and several times over, but I just like their approach and the way they, you know, do what they do. And they're unique. And, you know, once again, congratulations and kudos.
Yeah, they had quite an assortment of great musicians on their records, didn't they?
By choice.
Yeah, because they were sort of, you know, the duo at the helm, and then they brought different people in. Is that how it kind of worked?
Yeah, absolutely. But they had their own ideas on who they wanted to use. If they wanted to use Bernard Purdie on drums and Chuck Rainey on bass, you know, who were a great rhythm section, you know, to get a certain feel, that's what they did. And, you know, so Purdie would play that Purdie shuffle.
More like Babylon Sisters and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And, you know, Rick Marotta, they had great players all the time. Michael McDonald sang with them. Timmy Schmidt sang with them. The girls, you know, that did background vocals. I mean, they wrote great horn arrangements, and they did great studio arrangements. Just fabulous. Steve Gadd solo on Asia. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm a huge fan of that band.
Yeah, they are absolutely incredible. So now you put Joni Mitchell, Jonathan Brooke, and Sean Colvin in a sort of category together. Why is that? I mean, just, you know, the similarities there.
Well, I think they're three of my favorite female singer-songwriter artists, and I think that even though Joni was around before Jonathan and Sean, I think they both went to school on Joni and you know, and then put their own thing together. And I just really am in awe of these female singer-songwriters that do such a great job of being able to at least touch me musically and lyrically.
Yeah,
and Joni was, you know, I mean, Joni's records were just, once again, I wear those out. I've got playlists, and, you know, those three gals are on the playlist right along with Steely Dan and with, you know, a bunch of the Beatles tunes and everything else that I listen to. So.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why. I've just watched. There was a biopic a few years ago about Miles Davis. Well, not about, you know, sort of depicting his interaction with a journalist. I don't know whether you've seen it. It was, I think he was depicting sort of 70s or maybe even after that, Miles Davis, and then kind of looking back. And you know, he just seemed like such a cool guy and so talented and so brilliant. When you mentioned earlier that you got into jazz kind of towards the start of getting into music, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was a bebopper from the age of 10.
Wow. And so were you into Miles Davis then?
Yeah. And well, I mean, on Charlie Parker and all the old stuff, you know, Art Blakey and Dizzy and people like that, you know, and then on through the fusion eras, which, you know, Miles kept up with, you know, from Bitches Brew on, you know, and the players that he had playing with him and stuff. You know, he was an innovator and a musical genius. And, you know, I think people thought more about the fact that he was kind of a strange cat than what an innovator he was. You know, but I mean, if you look at Bert, if you look at Charlie Parker, once again, an innovator. So those are the people that caught my eye and my ear, and the people that I kind of stuck with and, you know, appreciated what they were doing.
And in terms of, you know, with jazz, it's so different to like, well, I mean, it's so different to the Beatles, and it's so different to pure Prairie League, and the chords are so different. And, you know, sometimes it's like there's not enough cheese in the progressions, as it were, for my sensibilities. How do you manage to appreciate both? Because a lot of the time when I speak to, you know, jazzers in inverted commas, they really don't get it about the Beatles, and I'm being deadly serious. They just don't. They're just like, it's all right. And sometimes I hear some jazz that that they'll show me, I'll be like, yeah, it's all right. And it's like we don't get each other. So how come you get both? I mean, I guess there must be so many people who get both.
I'm sure there are, but once again, a lot of people think jazzers are snobs, elitists, and in some ways they deserve to be thought of as such, because that's how they think of themselves, and they put the time in and the practice in and the discipline,
for sure,
which is incredibly difficult. But I just, I hear what's going on. I appreciate it. I mean, I had the jazz on Sirius XM station on for the last 2 hours while I was fooling around down here in the studio cleaning up for this podcast. So, I listen to jazz all the time, all day long. And, I appreciate what's going on. And I've gotten pretty used to being able to pick out things and certain artists and that. And that was, that's the same thing with the, between listening to the Beatles or listening to Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers or Weather Report, or Christian McBride's big band, or any number of, different artists. And once again, that's why I love those female singer-songwriters like Jonathan and Joni and Sean, because they have the ability to just reach in and grab me by the heart and the guts and tear me up, and I appreciate that art. That's a gift, and it's, and they consistently do that to me. I mean, I think more so than most male singer-songwriter types, I think females have a way to reach, at least me, with vocally, intellectually, lyrically, that that even outweighs most of their male counterparts.
Yeah, well, I mean, Joni Mitchell for sure, and it's rightly so, kind of constantly cited as one of the great. I mean, forget about even the vocals and some of the tunings, but also, I mean, the lyrics are just incredible, aren't they?
Yeah, and she had a great jazz sensibility as well.
Yeah, and so did and of course so did Steely Dan. In terms of they've got the chords going kind of on unusual places. I mean, it's not to say about jazz that they're snobs, because I think, as you said, it takes an enormous amount of discipline to get good enough to be able to play jazz, doesn't it? It's
Absolutely.
Really a remarkable skill. And so, how often do you still play at the moment during during these times, during the sort of coronavirus era?
Well, I play a lot here in my basement, and I also play out here in Long Island where I live with a friend of mine, Rick Davies, who was the keyboard player and singer-songwriter for Supertramp.
Wow.
And we've got a little combo, and we've been playing together for about 8 years, and we do a lot of old, jazz and blues, Blakey, Mose Allison, all kinds of things. We'll play a few shows here and there at the local clubs and benefits and what have you. So that's, we get to keep ourselves busy.
That's awesome. And in terms of music that comes out today, do you find yourself revisiting old stuff all the time, or do you listen to any new stuff?
I force myself, if you will, to listen to what's going on these days, because I'll go through the different, sweep the stations, and listen to what's happening in country music and popular music. And to be totally honest with you, there's not much that really blows my skirt up these days in popular music. There's so much derivative and so much contrivance to it that it just doesn't ring true enough for me. But then I'm in my 70s. I'm an old fart that appreciates the older way of doing things. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's a lot. I do think there's some well-made stuff, and there's some good stuff, and I keep up with it all. And I like grime music in the UK, and that's kind of a bit more rock and roll than anything new. And any new rock and roll these days, grime is more rock and roll in its sensibilities and in their attitude and stuff. But I find myself revisiting music made by the artists on your list, like Joni Mitchell, Steely Dan, the Beatles, far more than I listen to the music in the pop charts these days, or Marvin Gaye, Motown. I mean, there's such a treasure trove of old stuff, and I think it's fair to say nothing like it being made these days.
And the thing is that the kids that are making music these days, and I wish them all the best, good luck, and fair play. But they had to get their musical education somewhere, so that they were listening to that old stuff.
For sure.
And then putting their own touches and their own spin on it, which, that's the idea. But I mean, I can't keep up with how much of it there is.
There's so much, yeah.
Yeah, it's overload. It's content overload, and I don't really get to appreciate as much of it as I probably should. But, once again.
Do you listen to Spotify? Do you stream? Yeah. I mean, because that is, that's every single record for 10 quid a month, and it's just it is, as you say, it's the abundance of choice. I mean, do you still wear out records? Do you still kind of play a record again and again and again, like
once again? I've got shelves of LPs, vinyl LPs. I've got just cases and cases of CDs, and I play them all the time.
Oh, so you do. So you still listen to some stuff on vinyl as well. So you kind of mix it up.
Absolutely. There's something about certain records that the warmth and just the warmth of a vinyl recording is just, you can't beat it. And now look at vinyl has outsold CDs lately.
Yeah. Well, I guess the only reason my CDs would continue in any shape or form is just the cars that still have CD players in, and then some people who are kind of collectors might want the stuff, every single Beatles CD or Elvis, well, not Elvis CD because it's not as relevant, but yeah, you know what I mean. And
sure.
Sort of collectors. Other than that, like vinyl's just, if you're going to do something for the kind of novelty aspect of it almost, and for the audio quality and for the liner notes, like why would you have a little CD? Like the vinyl makes way more sense. Yeah,
well, once again, vinyl is an immersive experience. You've got the covers, which were always important to us. You've got the liner notes and the all the different things that the information that you could sit there listening to a record and read these things, and get a little bit of insight into the artist. And it's hard to do that on a streaming situation or on a CD. So
it's very, very difficult. And if you do try and do it by sort of Googling their interviews whilst you're watching, whilst you're listening to the track, you're kind of not properly concentrating on the music. And then of course also there's the added aspect with vinyl that you'll give it another try, you'll give it another spin.
Absolutely.
Whereas our lack of attention these days due to the abundance of content is pretty lamentable. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the Greatest Music of All Time podcast. I wanted to ask for my listeners who aren't familiar with pure Prairie League, aside for lambasting them for their lack of knowledge, I would like to encourage them to rectify that. And I if you wouldn't mind, what would you recommend? If you had to choose one album to start with, what album would you select?
Well, the album to start with would obviously be Bustin Out, because that was a very popular record, and it was the record that had Amie on it. I think Two Lane Highway was a really good record, the one that followed Bustin Out. I think that there's, every record we did, I'll put up against anybody, at least for what we could do and what we were able to do. But even the last record, the one in 2005, the All in Good Time, which we tried to sort of get back to the early mid 70s days of, Pure Prairie League's music and recording them. So I would recommend those, but I've got all the records and I listen to them all the time. I love a lot of the songs that were on those records, and I love what we were doing at that time. And I also see the arc of the band's music very clearly. So,
Yeah, it's a wonderful band. and so much like amazing melodic music. Thank you for creating it and for bringing so much joy to people, Mike. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Pleasure's mine. Thank you for having me on the podcast, Tom. The array of artists that you've done work with is just amazing, and keep up the good work. This is what everybody needs, is somebody like you to open their eyes and their ears.
Oh, thank you so much, Mike. That's very kind of you. Well, take care, and I hope you're able. I hope vaccination and all the rest of it means that you're able to get out on the road ASAP and make music and continue to bring happiness to people.
Like the record said, all in good time.
Indeed, all in good time. Thanks very much, Mike. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Meet Josh. Josh loves drumming. When he's not practicing, he's performing. And when he's not performing, he's practicing. Oh, and did we mention? Josh loves drumming. And that's why he chooses D-Bud. Hey Josh, show us your skills. Thanks, Josh. Noise harms your health. Josh knows that. He also knows that gigs get very loud. D-Bud's volume slider means that he can slide from minus 11 decibels to minus 24 decibels in the flick of a switch. And that's why Josh loves D-Bud. The problem with cheap earplugs is they often kill both the volume and the sound. The lower tones cut through the earplugs more than the higher ones. The bass overpowers the treble. There's an uneven attenuation of high and low frequencies, an unbalanced distorted sound. Yes, they protect your ears, but you get a muffled and dull sound experience. D-Bud isn't like that. Don't lose your hearing or peace of mind. Get D-Bud today.
If you're enjoying the Greatest Music of All Time podcast, you can keep up to date with all of our latest episodes for free by subscribing. If you're watching on YouTube, the subscribe button is located at the top of the Tom Cridland YouTube page. It's also at the bottom right of any video that you watch on YouTube. If you're listening on an audio platform, such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can subscribe at the top of the page.